It was one of those small-town mornings when the air smelled of gasoline, coffee, and rain-soaked asphalt, the kind of morning that promised both trouble and revelation. The highway diner at the edge of Willow Creek was already buzzing with the sound of roaring engines and laughter that could be heard from a mile away. A group of leather-clad bikers had taken over the parking lot, their motorcycles lined up like metallic beasts under the gray sky. Inside, the scent of frying bacon mixed with the heavy beat of old rock music. And then she walked in, a teenage girl, maybe 16, her boots dusty, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched a backpack that had clearly seen better days. Her jacket, oversized faded denim, hung loosely from her small frame. It wasn't the kind of jacket you'd expect to see in a biker hangout. It was covered in old patches stitched unevenly by hand, one corner fraying at the edges. But there was one thing about it that caught everyone's attention, a large patch on the back, partly hidden by her hair, its edges stitched in bright red thread. The bikers noticed her the moment she stepped through the door. Conversations quieted. The jukebox hummed. Then came the laughter, loud, crude, echoing through the diner like the sound of thunder. One of them leaned back in his chair, smirking as he elbowed his friend. "Hey, check out the kid's jacket. You lose your way to school, sweetheart?" The girl froze for a moment but said nothing. She kept her eyes down, walking to the counter. The waitress gave her a kind smile, the kind reserved for someone who clearly didn't belong but needed a little kindness to get through the day. She ordered a coffee, her voice barely above a whisper. Her fingers were trembling and the patch on her jacket glimmered under the light for a brief second. A flicker of silver and red thread. Outside, the bikers' laughter grew louder. One of them stood, walked over and leaned on the counter beside her. "Nice jacket," he said mockingly. "Did your grandma make those patches for you?" Still, she didn't respond. She just took her coffee, turned slightly, and in that movement, her hair shifted, revealing the full patch on the back of her jacket. It wasn't just any design, it was the emblem of a fallen biker club, one that had disbanded years ago after a tragic accident that had taken several lives, including the son of their founding member. The patch was sacred, known among the biker community as a mark of respect and loss. The laughter stopped. The man who had mocked her blinked, his expression changing from amusement to disbelief. Where did you get that?" he stammered. The girl turned slowly, her eyes calm but filled with something old and heavy, the kind of pain that had no business living in someone so young. "It was my father's," she said softly. "He was one of you." A silence spread through the diner like a wave. Chairs creaked. The man stepped back, realizing who she must be. Everyone in that part of the state had heard of Eagle Mike, the biker who had died years ago on that same stretch of highway, trying to save a stranded family during a storm. His sacrifice had become legend. The club had dissolved after his passing, the members scattering, guilt and grief tearing them apart. And here she was, his daughter. She continued, her voice trembling but steady. "He always said bikers protect the road, that they ride not just for freedom but for those who can't anymore." Her words hung in the air like the echo of thunder. One of the older bikers, a man with a scar across his cheek and gray in his beard, lowered his head. "You're Mike's kid," he said quietly. "You shouldn't have had to walk in here alone." The girl looked around the room, the patches, the leather, the helmets, and finally smiled, a small, brave smile. "I wasn't alone," she said. "He's still riding with me." The man swallowed hard. No one laughed after that. The same group that had mocked her now stood in silence, respect written across their faces. One of them reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a worn leather patch of their old club. He handed it to her gently, his voice low. "For your dad," he said. "And for you. Keep his road alive." Outside, the clouds broke apart and sunlight spilled across the parking lot. The bikers followed her outside, and one by one they started their engines. The girl climbed onto an old motorcycle, her father's, the same one that had been found and restored by a neighbor years after his death. She kicked it to life, the engine roaring with power, and for the first time that morning, the bikers didn't see a teenage girl, they saw a legacy. They saw him in her eyes, his spirit and her strength. They formed a line behind her, engines rumbling in unison, a thunderous symphony of respect. Together, they rode down that same stretch of highway, not as strangers but as family. The road stretched ahead, glowing under the sunlight, endless and full of meaning. The girl led the way, her father's patch shining proudly on her back. Each biker behind her carried their own memory, their own guilt, their own respect. The laughter that once filled the air was now replaced by something stronger: unity, redemption, and silent gratitude. And as they disappeared down the horizon, the words her father once told her echoed in her mind: "Don't ever let the world make you small. You carry my road now, ride it with heart." She smiled through the wind, knowing she was doing exactly that. When the ride ended miles later, the bikers gathered around her, taking off their helmets. There were tears in a few eyes, though no one said much. The man who had mocked her earlier stepped forward again, this time with his head bowed. "You taught us something today," he said quietly. "Doesn't matter how tough we think we are. Respect doesn't wear leather. It lives in the heart." The girl nodded, tears glistening on her cheeks. "My dad used to say the same thing," she whispered. "He said kindness is the road that never ends." The bikers exchanged glances. Some smiled, others simply nodded. They understood now she wasn't just her father's daughter. She was his legacy. Narrator voice for outro. Sometimes life puts us in places where we're judged before we're understood. But true strength isn't loud, and it's quiet, steady, and full of heart. This story isn't just about a jacket or a patch. It's about remembrance, kindness, and the way love lives on through courage. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us what you would have done if you were there that morning. And remember, every act of kindness can change someone's road forever. Subscribe to Be Kind Always for more real and inspiring stories that remind us, no matter how rough the road gets, kindness always wins.